Yeah, they surely don't want to do that. Save those seats for y'all.
How are you? Happy Valentine's Day. All right, good. Good to see you. Am I good?
I took it. Sorry, Andy, I took it. But I was just about to ask Chris if he wanted to go get one to take home.
To his Valentine.
To your Valentine.
No, we just said we're good.
Okay.
It was
Strawberry.
Well, that does sound nice. It was just unsafe. It's working. You really have to rely on two rooms. Yeah.
My team spoke very highly of you.
Oh,
When it came to the alumni part of the
oh, that's a, who was there?
Kay and Cole. They said they met y'all.
We were in San Antonio this week, planning. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Kate took good care of me because I'd throw in a tantrum last night. Of course, she was not there.
Now that I'm up to the third one, we finally really gelling with my group. And it's just, it's really so fun. And we are so
You know we're not going to
Everybody starts this town hall.
He's desperate for me. Every whatsoever.
Because I had to do something. I was only on the scene.
You raised the same house and told him that. Right?
South Lake podcast, whatever. And I only got suits.
Not okay. But that's how we start. So I let it happen.
And that was a
I would choose to raise it. Your child. Yep. You're in.
no, but I mean, obviously that's not true. Oh, and he was super stuff.
I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order, that the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody. I want to welcome you to this Valentine's Day edition of the HEBISD work session. I'd also like to take a second to wish good luck to our varsity girls basketball teams for both Trinity and Bell, who are playing in bi-district games tonight at UTA. So good luck to them.
Good mojo.
Yeah, and a lot of us would probably be there, but we got something else on the calendar. All right, tonight the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called work session. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be two open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Mr. Chapman, any comments?
No comments, and the clarifications were included in your Friday update.
Okay, thank you. So we are ready for open forum number 1? Nothing? All right, we do not need a closed session at this time. We're at item 6.01. Are there any questions on disbursements for the month of January? All right, curriculum-based assessment. Dr. Norgard.
All right. And good evening. Get the report up in just a minute. I will clarify as we're waiting for that this is a CBA report because similar to the fall when I presented on our English 2, we did make a decision this year based on input from our advisory groups at the high school. We moved from DBAs to CBAs. I have a slide that addresses that, but if you were wondering, I don't typically present on our CBAs, but just in the areas where we don't have a DBA. So the strategic plan quality indicators, this is interim data towards our meets and master's grade level on STAR. This is what I was just alluding to. So historically, we have been giving for several years a DBA at the high school level for 10th grade English 2 and 11th grade U.S. history that was a shutdown, but we made a decision with input from our advisory to move to 2 CBAs. Just a reminder, similar to with English 2, because when we try to shut down on a single day and because of our trimesters, not all of our students are at the same point in the curriculum and through the data, so it made comparisons a little more difficult. But not having all of our students testing at the same time does mean a different kind of shift that we need to make when we actually look at the numbers and the data. Another important distinction, because these are CBAs and not DBAs. Our DBAs, the passing standards that we use, this % correct as approaches, this much for meets, this much for masters, those all come from the TEA raw score conversion charts for the corresponding test. We look at when that star was last given, star or EOC, what % correct, and that's what we use for the next year's DBA. CBAs are curriculum-based assessments because those are essentially like a 6 weeks test, are graded like we grade other things. 70% passing would be meets, 90% an A is what we would call masters, and we don't report approaches on a CBA. But when you look at that comparison, to get 90% correct on a CBA in order to get masters, when on the EOC 78% correct would score a student as masters. That's a bit of a discrepancy. So you will see a lower % of students achieving masters. This was also a 25 question CBA because it's not a shutdown, and so you miss more than 2 questions and you can't get masters on the CBA, but you could still be well on your way to getting masters on the EOC. So when we look, since we have already had Part A of U.S. History in the fall try and then offered again in the winter try, I went ahead and combined those results across the 2 tries. You'll see right now all of our students that have tested so far, 40% meets, 6% masters. That is because of that very high standard on the CBA compared to EOC. But to talk about growth, we could look at students who were in A in the fall and have continued into B in the spring. Students that we have both data points. Now, not all of them have gone into the second half of U.S. history. Some of them won't have that until the 3rd trimester. But I can look of the students that were in both. I can see that we had a large increase at both meets and masters as we moved from Part A to Part B. Now, the rest of those 683 students that didn't test on CBA 2 means they're not in history right now, so we'll get data from them in the 3rd try. But really, overall, a strong performance for the students that we had both data points. These are our performance objective targets. So we are still, the masters is the more significant difference, but again, we were holding the CBA standard differently than a DBA. So when we look at the year-to-year, the kind of growth we would get between a DBA and EOC, back in 18-19, we were still getting some large differences. 19-20, we didn't get to give the EOC. And actually, last year, we were very tight predictive using the DBA. From the DBA to the EOC, just came up just a little bit from there. But since this year's are CBAs, and with those difference in the passing standards, we should definitely see growth here in the masters because I'm coming up to a standard of I only need to get 78% correct to be green on EOC versus 90% on our CBA. So responding to this data, our social studies department has purchased a program called S3 Strategies. The 3 S's are social studies success. It's an online targeted support system. So the classroom teachers are taking these individual student data on these CBAs and can then assign into the online where, you know, every student sitting in the class may be assigned different units because it's based on where were their gaps demonstrated on the test. So it really gives the opportunity to individualize. Of course, overall deficiencies that a teacher might be seeing for a class, I would address with my whole class, but when they're just those little individual of, you need to see a little more of this, you need to brush up on this, they can do that using that program that's TEKS-based. So that's our social studies data for this point in the year. Questions?
Any questions? No. Thank you. All right, full day pre-kindergarten update. Dr. Harrington.
All righty. So this evening, we're going to bring you an update on full day pre-kindergarten. This is year 3 of presenting information on this conversion from half day to full day. So this is our final update, and this is at the end of that process of converting to all full day programs. So we have a team with us here today. Dr. Norgard is here to answer questions. Renee Reek with special ed. Kelly with pre-K, she's coordinator pre-K family engagement, and Joey Martinack, our pre-K facilitator. So we have the whole team here if we do have any questions. Just for a seamless transition, though, I'm going to ask Dr. Norgard to do the presentation, but we have the whole team here to answer questions.
My data report was too short, so I get to come back. Yeah, because this is our final report in this rollout, as a reminder, 22-23 is the school year by which all school districts were to be fully in compliance with the House Bill 3 pre-K requirement. So we've been reporting on our update each time, but those final requirements are by this coming school year, full day pre-K for all of our eligible 4-year-olds, and that pre-K should have all of the following high quality components. So having to do with the actual program we're offering and who we're offering it to. Those are the big requirements from House Bill 3. So when we look at the plan for this coming school year, it hits in a couple of different areas because, you know, we have different programs within our overall pre-K program. We are adding 4 new full-day state-based classrooms. That balances with us converting 4 half-day state-based classrooms to full-day. Because when we take a half-day unit, they were serving 22 students in the morning and a different 22 in the afternoon. So if we just made that full day, I've lost the capacity for these other students. So that's why those come together, so I'm still serving the same number of students by doubling those classrooms. So that gives us a total, as we've moved over these 3 years, we're gonna have 25 monolingual state-based classrooms and 4 bilingual state-based classrooms. You know that last year, based on enrollment, some different things we saw coming back from the pandemic, we had reduced our core knowledge pre-K classrooms by 1. All indications are that is coming back strong. We are bringing another core knowledge pre-K classroom online for next year. We're adding 1 early childhood special education classroom and converting 3 of those half-day ECSE classrooms to full days. That's a total of 11 early childhood special education classrooms. And along with that, we're converting 2 of the existing state-based classrooms to blended classrooms. Because frequently our students with the special ed services, depending on the type of service they need, are they in that ECSE all day, or do they spend half of their day, much like we do inclusion with older grades, where they would come into a blended classroom. So 4 of the 29 state-based from above will actually have blended and be able to serve general ed and special education students. So this does bring, we've been reporting over the last several years just to keep that constant that in converting we haven't lost our ability. In fact, we are getting close to being able to serve almost 1,000 pre-K students in our plan for next year. So along with adding these classrooms, we have some additional needs. You can see we're just adding aides when we convert an existing unit to blended, because we'll now have a teacher who is certified SPED and Gen Ed, and then there was already an aide in there, we place an additional aide. That gives us our blended classrooms. And then where we have entirely new units, we're gonna need to place a teacher, we're gonna need to place an aide, and it would be nice if they had furniture in the room. So all of those things come into place with our new classrooms. In addition to having a place and the people and the things to sit on, we need things to teach from. This may sound like a lot when I just talked about the number of classrooms that we've added. You may or may not recall, last year among our Proclamation 2021, we adopted new pre-K curriculum. We did not purchase it at that time because we knew we had one more year of transition, and we wanted to use that new curriculum to write full-day programs, not, I have this many full-day and this many half-day, and so the curriculum stays a little bit out of step. So we adopted because it was part of Proclamation 2021, but we are now buying for all of our classrooms so that all of our classrooms will have this new curriculum with curriculum writers that are currently writing right now. What will that look like in full-day implementation? There's some additional resources for our bilingual classrooms, and also the supplemental curriculum materials. We have a few things, Zoophonics, Right Out of the Box, they're writing programs that are in addition to the Frog Street. All of our existing classrooms did have those. The Frog Street is new, but we needed that supplemental, goes along with those new classrooms that we're outfitting. So those were kind of the what we needed. Here's the summary of what each of those things are going to involve and the funding source, where that's coming from. So our state base, that's part of our staffing table. Furniture is going to come out of our early education allotment. We use our instructional materials allotment to purchase the curriculum, but things specifically for the CK pre-K, that comes from their budget that we collect through the tuition base. And for our SPED program, we are looking at the SPED budget to provide for those needs. Future considerations. So while Dr. Harrington did mention this was our last year of this phasing in to get up to full day, we will continue to look at this every year because that House Bill 3 is we will provide full day for all eligible 4-year-olds. If we end up with more eligible 4-year-olds than we've had, we're going to need more classrooms. So just to let you know, while it may not be this same report where we've been walking through this phase in, we will continue to look at projected eligibility. You know, when we get reports from our demographer, we're watching our trend data where we might need to add. Expressed interest in CK pre-K. That's what allowed us to bring one of those back. And then the demonstrated need for the special education support through ECSE. So we're still monitoring all of those things, but we'll be at full day. It's just, are we going to need more full day? Do we need to shift where some of our rooms or units are housed? So when we've done all of these things, when we bring these new classrooms online this year, that means that actually each of our 21 elementary campuses will have at least one of our high-quality pre-K programs. Some of them have 2 different programs and some up to 3, either the state-based monolingual, bilingual, CK pre-K, or ECSE. So all of our elementaries will be involved in at least one pre-K program. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So, Dr. Norgard, walk me through, and I have a guess, but I don't want to guess. We have 4 bilingual state-based classrooms, Bel Air, Oakwood Terrace, and Shady Oaks. What's the cutoff for that, or how do we determine that?
The cutoff for?
I mean, why those 3? Is it because of a certain percentage we reach of bilingual kids?
So those are our only 3 bilingual campuses. Yes, when you look at the total number we need to serve in the district of students that are qualifying for the bilingual education program, yes, if we tried to have it at too many campuses, we'd end up with classes where we couldn't really match the staff ratio. So based on need, where are most of those students coming from, that determined that. If we ever had an increase in number, we would look at, do we add additional classrooms at one of those campuses, or do we need to consider another classroom if in the future we were to see where they're coming from? But our bilingual pre-K will be at our bilingual campuses.
Okay. So when the slide that talks about future considerations, one of the things that we probably need to consider in the communication is that some of our neighboring, we're talking about eligible 4-year-olds. Some of our neighboring districts are talking about all 4-year-olds being included in free pre-K. So I don't know if that's going to be, something we need to worry about communicating, but it's just something that I thought of as I heard some of our neighboring districts talking about that.
We will certainly keep that in mind. Right now, this has been our roll into those that are eligible through one of the qualification areas, or if they're not eligible for our state base, that they be eligible for the CK pre-K.
Can you remind the board, I know I ask this every time we discuss this, but what makes a child eligible?
Okay, it could be based on economic status. It can be based on language, or students that do not have the language, students that are in foster care or formerly with Child Protective Services. It could be children of, I'm going to look at Joey because I know I'm Joey and Kelly. I'm going to forget one. One of our, a child of a star, star award, which is EMT, and then homeless. Did that get them all? Okay.
Okay, thank you. And have we had any current staffing problems with our current pre-K programs?
We're fully staffed in pre-K right now. We do, along with House Bill 3, part of that high-quality components is also teacher certification. So we are looking at providing additional coaching and things for teachers with that early childhood component to make sure that we continue to have that high-quality level.
Okay. Any other questions?
Dr. Norgard, if you're a eligible child that lives in Meadow Creek or Shady Oaks or Viridian Zone, and there's not a state-based program at your school, you know, we don't provide transportation. So they have the opportunity to go to another school. How many folks are actually taking advantage of that? Do we have anybody, do we have the numbers on the people who are living in a zone without a state-based school who are transferring to another state-based school?
I think we'd have to look into those numbers, but we do have a specific overflow pattern, like if they come to one of these schools, or if they come to a school that does offer state-based and they've already filled all of their slots, how do we get them to the next closest campus for them and their services? But we can look into the exact numbers that we're on overflow right now.
Are these three schools that don't offer state-based because we don't believe that there's a need, or we don't have the capacity, or a third reason?
There's a lot of factors that go into looking at where ours are. Because we don't have the transportation, we are trying to look at where are the students that need these services. Viridian is not, maybe for some of our students, the easiest location to get to when we look at what's further out. But then we see some new things like Trinity Lakes is further out. But if we start seeing a need, when we move from close down West Hurst and open Trinity Lakes and where their needs are. We look a lot with our demographers report at where the needs are.
To piggyback off of Julie's question, you know, we've got a group of folks who are eligible for state-based, and we're going to offer more pre-K to them, which is excellent. We've got folks who are able to afford our CK pre-K tuition, which in many ways is you know, in line with some other pre-K programs. But there are folks in the middle. Once they get to kindergarten, if you're not in the state-based program or you're not in CK pre-K, do we track whether those folks, those students, have had a pre-K program somewhere?
We have a pre-K partnership with the whole area. In fact, we have a training coming up Saturday after next, where we work with our partners to also provide PD for teachers at our community preschool programs within the district, so that we're making sure that those students that maybe didn't come through our program have had the best opportunities, and we do that in partnership with community preschool programs.
But are we able to identify when a student comes to kindergarten whether they've had any pre-K whatsoever?
It would really be up to a parent report, whether they tell us that they have or not. We don't necessarily collect it as a
We don't collect it
data
as a
point.
data point?
But I don't believe there's any team's input on that data.
Okay. Thanks, Holly.
All right, any more questions? All right, thank you. All right, item 701, financial statements for the month of December 2021. Mr. Williams.
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, and happy Valentine's Day. We will start with the general operating financial statements ended December 31st, 2021. Are you moving that? Or am I? No, I can't. As you can see, we have a fund balance as of 12/31 of $172,204,362. If you want to follow along in the detailed financials, that would be on pages 2 through 6. The revenues, as you remember last month, the revenues were actually less than the expenditures, but we've flipped that because December is one of our higher tax collection months, and that will continue. December, January, February will be our high tax collection months, so you will see the revenues exceeding expenditures as they have this month in the amount of $29,335,021. Total expenditures as of 12/31 are at 31.94%, so you can, that's below the 4/12 of the year, which would be at 33%. So we're tracking right on target with where we should be this time of year. Wrong way. The next report we're going to look at is the Wrestler report. You can see that the payroll is trending at 85%. Of course, this typically, it's our number one expenditure always. This typically runs about 87%, and the earlier in the year it is, that will be less than that because we've made other expenditures earlier in the year. We've talked about that before. So that is inching up towards that 87% mark, and that's probably where we should finish out really close to 87% at the end of the year. Utilities are our number two expense at $1.271 million, 2%. Instructional supplies are running at 1% or $829,077. Can't get to go in the right way. The food service fund, Mariella continues to do a great job. That will be referenced on page 8 and 9 of the details. Total expenditures as of 12/31 are running at 28.69%, so that's well below the 33% mark that we look at that against. We do have a fund balance of $7,661,075, revenues over expenditures of $1,278,729. They're on track, doing very well. Unfortunately, part of the reason they're doing very well is because we don't have as many people in the food service department as we need, so we don't have as many expenses with payroll in that department. So that's one of the reasons they're doing great from a financial standpoint. So kudos to them for getting it done with the staff they have. Too touchy. The debt service fund has a fund balance of $32,057,424. That will be referenced on page 10 and 11 of your detailed financials. These also will, the tax collections are ramping up, so these revenues will be increasing just like the debt service. We do have revenues over expenditures of $19,076,746. Our first debt payment is actually due tomorrow, but we've already made it in the amount of $7.687,283 million. The second debt payment will be, which will be principal and interest. First one is just mostly interest. The second one in August will be $29,097,282 for our total debt service of $36,784,564. I'll let you do it. My fingers are too jumpy. The pre-K CK program, we have a fund balance of $218,056. That will be referenced on pages 13 and 14 of the fund details. Revenues, of course, exceed expenditures in the amount of $198,041. This program continues to do well with kiddos back in school. Got plenty of people enrolled in that, so doing well. Total expenditures as of 12/31 are at 28.86%. Again, that is below the 33% for 4/12 of the year. Moving to the next program, special revenues. Of course, this is one big fund that we have that's made up of several funds consisting of federal, state, and local grant programs. These can be referenced on pages 16 and 17 of the financials. These funds are self-sufficient. We are able to spend what we get, and that is determined by the grant programs themselves as to what we can spend those things on. So it's a very restrictive program, and we just as we make expenditures, we collect against those expenditures, and at the end of the year, we all balance it all out, so. Total expenditures as of 12/31 are at 14.29%, so that's well below the 33% mark. Everything in that program is tracking as expected as well. Go ahead. Got it. Campus activity funds have a fund balance of $3,161,056. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $208,536. These can be referenced on page 18 and 19 of the details, financials. Pretty much not a lot to say about this program other than its fundraising activities are pretty much back to normal for the most part with everybody back in school and doing what they do. So the 2018 bond fund, we have fund balance there of $30,349,919. We have revenues less than expenditures in the amount of $2.924597. The reason for that being is that we don't have any new revenue into that program, under that fund, unless we sell some bonds or other than maybe a little bit of interest revenue, maybe. But other than that, no new revenue into that fund. The majority of our remaining expenditures at this point are for the support staff building at West Hurst as we finish going through the payout on those, and then for the retainages we've got on some of the other completed projects, we're starting to pay out some of those retainages as we've gone through punch lists and warranty items and all that kind of stuff. The locally defined capital projects fund, we have a fund balance of $48,020,318. Revenues, again, they are under expenditures in the amount of $410,967. Again, this is a fund that, unless the board decides to put monies into that fund, it has no revenue income for it. Most of these funds are currently being utilized to finalize the Oakwood Terrace project, which is virtually done for the most part, as well as some of the new projects that such as the transition center that we're starting up on, and some of those other approved projects that we discussed at the November facilities meeting. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions on the financial statements?
Pretty quiet month for financials.
All right, we'll go down to budget transfers.
Budget transfers, again, they are very minimal for the month. We have some small transfer requests for instructional supplies in Function 11, long-term sub-assignments in Function 11, dyslexia general supplies in Function 11. And then in 13, some more instructional supplies, dyslexia general supplies. Those are the corresponding functions for the ones I just mentioned, and the others are summer principal conference and for some additional office assistance. But again, very small amounts in the big picture of things.
All right. Any questions on budget transfers? Okay, now we're down to college entrance examination, Board of Advanced Placement examination fees. Were there any questions on this?
My only question is kind of forecasting forward, Joe. You know, do we anticipate receiving the results of these tests and then evaluating whether we're going to continue without the qualifying tests?
Yeah,
when is that discussion going to take place?
We'll definitely, once we get the results this summer, we will sit down, review the results, review campus course results, campus results, teacher results, and then make a determination if if we can continue or we need to return to the APQT.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, next item, uninterrupted power supplies. Any questions on those replacements? Okay, pre-K instructional materials. Any questions? Early childhood special education pre-K classroom furniture and materials. Any questions on this purchase? All right, and third-party student transportation. Any questions on this?
So I have a question on this one. So we are still in the initial contract term that was signed in 2020. Is that correct?
I think that's, as far as the RFP. Yeah, that's your.
Yes, sir, we are.
So
We
what,
did award to the two vendors in 2020, and we are in the initial contract term with them.
so what is the cost under the contract?
Pardon me?
What is the cost under the contract?
We awarded for 2 years to the two vendors on an as-needed basis. We don't know each year what we're going to be needing because of the number of students, where they are, how many.
What did we pay last year?
I would have to look back and see what we ran last year. Previously, transportation had been helping us with these services, but with the shortage of drivers and such, they haven't been helping us. And we've had an increase in students this year, so, but I can get that data for you from federal.
So these are all paid through federal funds.
Correct.
I'm just trying to determine how we arrived at a not to exceed $200,000 amount.
It was based on what she had spent to this point so far, so as she was looking at the numbers have gone way up, and if we get that data, we'll get the data 2 years back, because last year's data, we didn't have as many kids coming to school, so we need to really go back a year, but even going back a year, our homeless numbers have really increased.
So,
That's really what I'm trying to figure out is, what are our numbers that point us to 200,000? Are we seeing a big jump, and what does that look like to us? I mean, this program is to provide transportation for homeless kids.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know what are our numbers, because I don't see it here.
Well, I think that they've spent around $94,000 to January, and that's why she feels that she can come in under 200,000, but had to set a limit because it was obviously going to exceed where we've been.
And I think that's fine. It may be helpful to provide us some numbers on what this program looks like in our district. How many homeless kids are we providing transportation to under this federal program? $200,000, I'm not worried about the money side of it. I just want to know how many kids this is getting to and from school and what this looks like here in the district.
And these are the McKinney-Vento students, correct?
Yes.
So not every homeless student will be eligible for be utilizing transportation. Only those that have had a change in their residence such that they need to remain at their home school.
So,
yeah, we do usually. So the money that we spent so far, that's this academic year, since.
Correct.
Okay.
Since September 1st.
Okay.
I think maybe the disconnect is that we normally get a report that talks to us about how many homeless students we have. And since it's not on the same night as this, maybe that's where the disconnect is.
Well, I'll get an update from Dr. Morris, and we'll have that. Oh, yeah.
Is that any?
Yeah, that's it. I'm just thinking if this is coming back to us in 2 weeks to vote on, it's just some data I'd like to have.
Yeah.
There's just nothing here.
What qualifies as homeless? What qualifies a student as homeless?
Well, obviously, if they don't have, I'm trying to think the exact terminology.
They lack a fixed, consistent residence.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we check on that?
We have social workers over at the Family Support Services building that verify their homeless status. And they go out to the addresses and actually, if they go to hotels, they go to apartments,
I think in January, don't quote me on this, but Ellen LeBou came to speak to the chamber leadership class. And I want to say in January, there were already over 600 maybe identified kids. And she said it was up like 50% from the previous 2 years. It was something like that, but it was an extraordinary amount of kids, more than we had seen in 17, 18, 19, even the shutdown in 20. It was an extraordinary amount of kids.
Yes, and it also includes doubling up. So if they might have multiple, multiple families, aunts and uncles and everybody else living together.
Kids that are couch surfing, sleeping in their cars, sleeping at the Y.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, we're gonna move down to action items. Update on the 2021-2022 staffing table. Ms. Tuttle?
So we're asking you tonight to consider approving one additional teacher coach position for Trinity High School only for the remainder of the 21-22 school year to assist with supporting athletics.
Okay, any questions on this item?
What's necessitating this addition?
Our football program is needing the additional staff for the remainder of the school year.
What position is this gonna, is the coach going to be coaching, and is he gonna also get a teacher? It's a coach teacher. Is it also a classroom
Correct.
component?
That is correct. Classroom, teacher, and coach.
What is the class they're gonna be teaching?
I'm not sure how they will divvy that out.
They'll just depend on the person that they select. I don't think they've identified a particular content area. They're just looking right now at the coach that will come in and fill the position.
What's the coaching position?
The coaching position is, as you recall, we talked about the fact that when the new head coach comes in, we will have an opportunity for him to bring both an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. So for this particular position, this is a defensive coordinator position. That was the only one that was identified at this time.
Okay, so we're adding an FTE, so there's gonna be 2 defensive coordinators being paid through the end of the school year?
Yes.
That's correct. That is correct. And that is aligned to our process that we've used in previous scenarios with the same position at a different campus.
When do we anticipate the hiring date?
Well, if you guys vote to approve this tonight, we will post immediately. And our goal would be by the end of March to have someone in place to assist with spring football. Are there any other questions?
Any more questions? All right, this is an action item, so I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the update to the staffing table, new unit as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the new unit as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right. Approval of amendment number 3 to AIA B 102-2007 standard form agreement between HEBISD and Huckabee and Associates. I know the information on this was included in the Friday update. Are there any questions? All right, this is a action item, so I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve amendment number 3 to the original contract with Huckabee and Associates, Inc.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve amendment number 3 to the original contract with Huckabee and Associates, Inc. Please vote. All right, and this motion passes. We are ready for open forum number 2. What's that?
Good for them to know. And I can answer it, I mean, just,
What was your question?
if you look on the contract, I know y'all think I'm. It says, 5%. It says in accordance with the agreement dated May 21st, 2018, basic services for the Bel Air Elementary Replacement Project prototype shall be billed at 5% of the cost of the work for the new prototype projects. Well, to me, it was Bel Air, but it says projects, so my question was, when they say projects, is it for all the elementaries, or just Bel Air? Because we know in the past, this is 5%, and normally it's 7, 8, maybe more than that now. And so since we use the same architect and the same plans, it's only 5%, so we're saving probably 2 to 3% because of this.
Yeah, our last percentage was 5.5% for the new bills. So they actually are dropping at 0.5%. And then you are correct, the 7 or 8% is when they have to do any renovations. That's a much more, expensive percentage because they don't know what they're going to get into. But I think this contract only is being awarded for Bel Air. So
This
they would
addendum
come back
is-
with additional contracts in the future.
Yes, for Bel Air, but
this
it's
is
my
only-
understanding from Huckabee that moving forward, they will do the rebuilds at 5% because are using prototypes. We have the prototype design, so there's a little bit less work involved for them, so that's my understanding moving forward. But yes, this one is actually only for Bel Air to be added.
Projects.
Yes,
Yeah.
it did. So, and that was the wording that came from them on that addendum.
And we'll hold it to them.
Yes. Good catch, though.
All right, so we're going to start open forum. When you come to the microphone, please state your name. Your time will begin when you start speaking. You will have 3 minutes. Your time remaining will appear on the overhead screen, and we respectfully ask that you conclude your remarks at the end of your time. So our lone speaker for this evening is Lisa Langston.
Thank you. Good evening. I have 3 points. Hopefully I can get to them all. First of all, just there's a little bit of residual through the district. If there's some way that we can get across the board to all the schools that I know in 2 circumstances, 2 different schools where people are kind of making up their own rules. One is a parent called to ask if they could have lunch with their child. They were told yes on the phone, but you have to wear a mask. Another instance where a dad and a toddler went up to school to have lunch with their first grader, and he could not come in because he had the toddler with him. So just, anyway, food for thought to be thinking about that. It should just be, everything should be normal and back to usual. Second, in reflection of the past several meetings I've attended, hearing that we have a less than majority of kids that are prepared for college, 7th graders that are having to learn to read instead of history, kindergartners who are really struggling, learning things that are being taught because they are not age appropriate, 1st grade teachers telling the kindergarten teachers what you're teaching right now, we should be teaching in 1st grade. I would just ask you all to really, really, really think about programs that you're approving. Make sure that they are age appropriate and we're not making these babies learn things that their brains aren't ready for. It seems to be also taking effect when they're older. If we're not getting the fundamentals, I know I've had people in agreement that old school sometimes is the best way, but these babies in kindergarten aren't even having time to learn their letters and sounds, and they're coming now out of COVID with no school experience, no social experiences. So we've got to work on that. The third topic is the CRT and SEL, and I know people think it's not here. It is very much here.
I am a part of preschool professional development within HEB. Right here at the top of a class that's coming up is please come, and we have social emotional learning strategies. What I would ask is that we don't take time out of our day in our teaching to teach this. It's a natural thing. As a teacher, as a mom, as you go throughout the day, if a child's angry, we work through that. We don't need to take 30 minutes out of a week, out of a day, to have these kind of lessons, because our kids cannot read, they cannot do math, they do not know history, and we're missing the boat. And as I've said before, HEB is a very diverse district. We should be proud of that. And I just feel like we're wasting a lot of tax dollars and times in teaching something. And Frog Street, y'all better look really close at that for the next approval. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. All right, on to other business. Do any board members want to request any items be placed on a future board agenda? All right, part of the Friday update, not this last week, but I think the week before, Mr. Chapman had sent out information about the TASB governance camp. I don't know if anybody had any interest in that. We have gone before in order to present. This year we don't have a presentation to do, but there could still be 2 slots open for anybody who wanted to attend that, so.
When is it?
Yeah, March 2nd through 5th. So just let the superintendent's office know if anyone's interested in that. Review of the board activity chart. See, Ms. Cole wanted to speak about the.
Oh, I just wanted to remind everyone that I see there's a lot of us that are signed up to go to the TASB, my brain is, grassroots meeting, which is this week here at our own Buinger. Normally, instead of the NTAASB meeting in February, the NTAASB sort of hosts the TASB grassroots meeting. We only do this every 2 years. If you haven't been, or you haven't been in a while, I just want to put it out there that, you know, it's a good meeting for you to go to. It's a great opportunity to see what everyone else in Region 11 is interested in seeing TASB advocate for. And since it's here in our building, I think I'd love it if we had a good showing, so.
I'm excited to show it off.
Okay, thank you for that. It looks like we have everything else that actually has a date. People are going to. There's a few things on here that I guess haven't been scheduled yet. So, let's see, we'll move down to review and discussion of board goal number 3. Don Jordan Wells and Fred Campos. Who's gonna lead?
Fred is gonna lead.
So just a quick remarks, fill in the room for those of you that don't know. So we do break off into committees to help out with some of our board goals, and Dawn and I have been working on advocacy. And we've been looking at all of the semantics of what that takes, what it looks like, what an email is, all that. We are now in the process of putting together a shorter version of the leave behind, or what we would give to our
Are you talking about the advocacy agenda?
Yeah. So at your place, you have some of the elements, and it's not that any of these elements are bad, but we need to prioritize them a little bit. And typical of this board, it isn't so much that it just becomes one committee and we make all those decisions. We really want to involve you guys in helping to prioritize what some of these need to be as far as what is the most important. So if you would take a minute or so and look through it, what we're going to do is, you see here on the wall on the left, we have some of these elements abbreviated and spelled out. And like we've done before with the little dots of determining what is the most important element, we're going to probably do a little voting scenario like that.
In the first go-round, we'll use just the red dot.
Thank you.
And if we need to go another round, we'll use the green dot next, and then, of course, finally the blue dot. So this first go-round that we, have you put your dot where you're most interested in it being, use the red dot only, please.
Just choose one.
Do you
Yes.
want us to?
Yes, I want you to go over there and do it.
Yeah, but do you want us to pick like the overall category?
No, not the overall, but
No.
underneath, there's a space
Okay.
like to the left of the advocate and then the left of the insurer,
Okay.
to put it in that section.
And again, for clarification, those are the summaries up there and your details are here in your hand. So, yeah, just one at this point.
Right now?
You got one dot, you can pick one.
One dot,
Or tonight?
Right now.
yeah.
And then what happens?
We'll see where the dots
See
land.
where we're at.
Where we fall.
Not a consensus, we do it again.
That's correct.
Right.
Are you going to, is your intention to skinny the advocacy agenda down to one thing, or to have a overall agenda with all of the things that have been important to us, but to focus on one?
To focus.
It is. I look at it two ways. It's not that we're going to leave things off, but if you were summarizing or they said, hey, there's only one point we want you to talk about, what would that point be?
My hesitation is that between now and the next legislative
I know.
session, it could completely change.
Agreed.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at least this gives us a starting point, yes.
Because we want to start having these conversations with
More
who-
regularly,
now.
correct, correct.
So we have to go with who we currently have and being able to discuss things with them.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. Yep.
So again, I just want to thank you guys. We had some idea of what we were leaning towards, but we didn't want it to be just a two-person committee in that. So your participation kind of helped confirm where we are with this. We will revise and make one final update for this that we'll present to you guys, and then we'll continue to move forward with what we got. Thank you very much.
All right, so at this time, we will adjourn into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551. The board will adjourn into closed session for the purpose of Section 551.071 to 551.074. We have one. We didn't have one with Steve. Oh. Shouldn't be.
Well, Talentville, we will see you. Shut down and I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully you don't stay too long.
Thank you, Tom, by the way.
Yes, so sometimes we just don't even get to chat, so we're taking 3 minutes. But thank you.
Good night, Miss Cindy.
sometimes that's why you have all these crazy people like the Moms of Liberty and whatnot, trying to throw wrenches and trying to get on school boards and trying to do all this other stuff so they can
so long.
It's okay. You want to taking care of business, playing with it.
Matt,
Yes?
Matt,
Yeah, I'll put notes on the three gentlemen.
This is for the plus delta. Here, I'll put it on there. Did everybody take these?
I've got three gentlemen I need to put on with.
Okay. But we only had enough for all of us, right? Okay. Because if we have extra or somebody can't do it, I'll try to help you do ASF some more.
Okay, great, because Julie just offered two. Okay, good.
I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Okay, I brought my,
8:03.
Oh, Matt, sign the,
brought my task book back.
Very
And I'm supposed to
good.
get envelopes from you.
yes.
Thanks for helping me spy on Kay, because I'm assuming she's working in Huntsville, right?
Yes, I'll get you her.
Okay. I want to send her, because she was so amazing to me, and she found this candy that weekend, and she was giddy with joy, when a little girl over these nerds candy had actually found some. And I just wanted to send it to her, tell her thank you for turning my call and my school.
Already turned the audio, okay, yes.
You have a storm?
I did. I did. I wasn't very happy with the protocols that were set. And
Oh.
Diana Freeman and I kind of had it out before.
Ah.
And there were some fairly tense things that happened. And of course, I called Kay. I was like,
Okay.
you just
Couple
help me
things.
through it. So
This
she did.
to
And
you.
then she was very
Okay,
sweet
so
that
make sure I got
weekend to
everything
kind of
back.
She's wonderful. I really like her.
Okay,
navigate
Hers
the
there.
waters and make sure that everybody
Only you
has
see
a
the
good time and
interest.
that we can have conversations
Is the
that were
hotel.
good.
Good.
Um,
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
So I have a question for you.
and we
Yeah,
had
I
a
know
great
the answer,
weekend.
that's why I'm asking.
The alumni board planning really did, it was fantastic.
And you want to just keep the book.
Good.
Really good
Where were you in town?
brainstorming. We
So
were
here's the
at
hotel
a
list.
Hilton
So
that
I
they just
drove.
poured like
So I put my mileage
millions
on
of
it.
dollars into,
But I have
completely
two
renovating.
gas receipts.
In Austin?
It's
Isn't
called
it less expensive to
Estacio-
just
yeah.